Hello, my name is Charles, and I am going to give you a quick, succinct, clear, and effective video on how you can defeat fear and anxiety in a world that feels like it's falling apart. So, we're going to come at this from a couple layers. The first, right, is the recognition. Now, whatever worldview or perspective you have, obviously with the understanding that you didn't create this world, you sort of spawned into it. There are rules or principles that govern it, and it seems to be far vaster and greater than any human comprehension can fathom. So whatever intelligence is governing this universe, that has made it in such a way where you have gotten this far. So trusting in the universe, the universal intelligence. Right, if you're Christian, trusting in the unconditionally loving God will be the first step, right? Because when you see things on the news, or you look at Reddit and you're scared, or when you lost the job, or you're lost somewhere and you can't get home, and you're like, what am I going to do? Right? Okay, the thing orchestrated this. It's gotten me this far. I can figure this out. So first is trust, right? Trust on the highest level of I'm Christian and believe in the unconditionally loving God, but you could, if you're atheist and secular, you can just be like the intelligence of the universe, whatever orchestrated all the rules of the game. Now, second, right, we're going to go from what's it called? We're going to go from control. Right, we're going to let go of control to get rid of that fear and anxiety. So let's say now, right, and there's a twist to this. So let's say now you're that same person, right, you have that some level of trust, and now you see, right, this is the second method to reduce fear and anxiety when the world is falling apart. Now you see, right, on the news or on Reddit, some catastrophe, and you're like, the world is falling apart, or you're outraged at some political thing, right? You don't have to solve it. So you're going to, right, if you can clearly understand that you don't have to solve that problem, or you're not responsible for that problem, for your well-being, then that's the first step. Okay, so I'm not responsible for the big, outer event, right? But let's say now you're outraged. The twist is if you have responsibility, right, an ability to respond to the situation, so it's out of your control, you didn't cause it, for a lot of the times you can't control, right, like if a president says this thing or that thing, you can't control what they said or did, right, but you have a responsibility, an ability to respond to the situation. So you have two options. You can become wounded, or you can become wise. So you could skulk and sink in the fear or in the outrage and boil, or you could become wise. And you could say, okay, let me discern. Let me sit with this. Is this something, worth transforming that outrage into some kind of outreach, some kind of awareness online or in person, or some kind of pragmatic solution? Is this worth, is this something that I can actually affect? Is this a bad thing? And then, from there, right? Or you can be like, maybe, I can't do anything about it. My outrage isn't helping. Let's let that go, right? I didn't cause it. I'm not responsible for it. Just by the nature of the circumstance, I can't solve it. So I'm going to let that go. So those are some of the options, right? We can be wounded, or we can be wise. And wise is a thumbs up. Now, so those are two ways to handle the fear, right? So you got the ultimate, and you got a personal kind of mental, right, level. Now there is the behavioral level. So you're afraid, and you're like, man, let's say this fear or anxiety is not based on a world event. All right, the world may be feeling like it's falling apart, But your anxiety is really about, how am I going to get this goal or this objective, or see the person I love, or, serve the person I love? How am I going to have this romantic relationship? How am I going to, be good to my family? How am I going to succeed in school? Whatever, right? Let's say you have a goal, right? So on the behavioral level, how do we solve the anxiety? I think this is twofold. The first is the first is wellness. So if you can attend, right? There's an old quote that goes, if you're going to chomp down a tree and you have 6 hours, spend the first 5 hours sharpening. So take care of your body, take care of your mind, and take care of even, a little bit of your outer environment, and try to help people around you, and it'll take care of you, right? Because a healthy body and a healthy mind will just, across your life perform better. That's right. And the second thing, and this is where it ties into what solves the fear or anxiety, is now that you have that trust in something bigger than yourself, is essentially walking the walk, or doing it, is taking that leap of faith. So let's say it's a school thing. Now let's say you just got into college and you're anxious about, like, am I going to graduate, or will I be able to do it? Now what should you do? The behavior is just outwork your self-doubt. See how much work and focus, see what rhythm, right? This is the juice of life. It's figuring out how you're going to, have fun on the journey of your goals of love and service. And, this is how you're going to get that degree, or get that, see the person you love. You're going to figure out the details and live it out. And along the way, you can reflect. And so, essentially, what I think the fear, originates from, and it's not easy, right? There's fear and anxiety can be difficult, but if you are going through it, right, and you are a Gen Zer, and you have fear and anxiety, and the world seems like it's falling apart, just always recognize, right, that there's something bigger than you that is running the show, that you are going, right, you're not responsible for these events, and you can respond, you have an ability to respond to them in a wise, loving, and, service-oriented, caring way. What's it called? And that, the joy and the fun and the goodness of life is kind of the process of, carrying out those loving acts. And so you don't have to feel the weight of the world on your shoulders, right? When the world's falling apart, just take care of yourself, be joyful, and go pursue the highest, most loving, noteworthy goal that pops in your mind, right? That your heart truly desires, and that God would have so. And I think you will find that fear, that the anxiety dissipates, like when you throw a flame in, throw a match into a pond, it just extinguishes immediately, and you can ride the wave of a good life. So I hope this helps. I know there's a lot of people out there, Gen Zers, that are afraid and anxious and don't know what to do and don't know how to overcome fear when the world is falling apart. But these are my steps that I think will help any individual along the path solve and conquer their fear and anxiety. Have trust, be well, much love, and you got this.